Hi, and welcome to episode 2 of our series on lenses. In this episode, we'll discuss the differences between consumer or photo lenses and their more expensive cinema counterparts. Let's start big picture. In the photo world, lens choice is pretty uniform, so you mostly just choose the brand that fits your camera. Mostly, Canon shooters use Canon glass with Canon mounts, same with Nikon shooters, Sony, or Fuji. Whereas in the cinema world, there are a ton of options, and deciding which glass is right for a film is a huge, complicated deal. So much so that camera departments spend a lot of time prior to shooting to plan the right lensing of a film, and the industry pays attention to these choices. This is possible in part because the cinema world uses only one kind of lens mount, a PL mount. It's a lot beefier than photo mounts because it's made to securely hold really heavy glass, and it means you can use virtually any brand of cinema lens on your camera. For smaller content creators, there's even more choice. The sky's the limit. If you're using a camcorder like this FS7, you can use just about any type of lens you want with the right adapter, like this photo lens, or this Sony-specific cinema zoom, or this PL cinema lens. Options are great, right? Sure, but what do you do with all that choice? Lenses for large sensor video cameras come in three main categories: photo lenses, rehoused cinema lenses, and true cinema lenses. Here for comparison, we have these three. We have a Zeiss photo lens in 25mm, we have a Zeiss rehoused cinema lens in 25mm, and we have an RE true cinema lens in 24mm. Also, I call this lens rehoused because the guts, the internal workings, are essentially a photo lens. It's this lens, essentially more or less, that's been rehoused into a cinema body. These lenses are the same brand glass, same focal length, and generally the same aperture speed, but their price tags range from $800 to over $18,000. What makes them so different? First, their functionality. Cinema lenses come with focus and iris gears that are typically all in the same position relative to the mount, so you don't have to change the setup of things like your follow focus when you change lenses. You can leave the camera alone and just switch the lens. Each line of cinema lenses will also have the same diameter for filters or matte boxes. You won't have to make any other changes to your accessories when you swap lenses. There's also a difference in focus throw between these lenses. Focus throw is the amount you have to turn the barrel of the lens to go from close focus out to infinity. And generally, the less you have to turn to change your focus, the harder it is to be precise and the jerkier your focus pull will be. Photo lenses don't need a long focus throw because they're meant to jump quickly into focus before you snap your photo. But when you're shooting video, you really want longer, smoother throw that's much more precise. Another major difference between these lenses is how much they breathe. Focus breathing is a term we use for when the image seems to zoom in and out when you pull focus. It's just much more complicated and more expensive to make a lens that doesn't breathe, so generally you'll find a certain amount of breathing in any lens that isn't a true purpose-built cinema lens. Another factor is aperture adjustment. Older lenses allow you to control it on the lens, but by clicking into full or half stops. Photo lenses might not come with an aperture ring at all, since the photo cameras and some camcorders control aperture from within the camera, whereas cinema lenses have a smooth iris adjustment. This gives you much more granular control over your look and exposure, and it's needed if your shot transitions from a low to a high light scenario or vice versa, and you're forced to change the iris mid-shot. Also, photo lenses measure aperture in f-stops, while cinema lenses measure it in t-stops. There isn't a huge difference, and most videographers can use either with no real difference in function, but let's explain them. F-stop is just a calculation. It's the focal length of the lens divided by the diameter of its aperture. It basically means the theoretical amount of light that will reach your sensor. Whereas t-stops, on the other hand, measure the exact light that gets to the sensor. See, different lenses lose different amounts of light as it passes through the lens, mostly because of the coatings on the glass. Basically, this means some lenses let in more light at a given aperture than others. In the photo world, who cares? You just compensate while you shoot. But in the cinema world, you often have to match two or more cameras shooting through different types of lenses. When you match your t-stops, they should match perfectly. Now let's talk about what might be the biggest difference between these lenses, and that's price. A standard prime photo lens can cost you anywhere from $100 to $3,000, whereas the beefier cinema versions of the same lenses can run $500 up to about $4,000. But true cinema lenses, on the other hand, run a minimum of about $8,500 all the way up to $50,000 per lens. The huge jump in price have made rehoused cinema lenses a huge and growing category of lenses. They cost a bit more than photo lenses and include a lot more of the functionality you'd expect from a cinema lens. However, because a lot of the inner workings are based on photo lenses, they may have shorter focus throws and more focus breathing, but they're a really great compromise for getting cinema functionality on a more realistic budget. So why do people pay so much for cinema lenses then? for 3 reasons: build quality, accuracy, and the look of the pictures they make. In terms of build quality, big names in cinema lenses like ARRI, Cooke, Leica, Panavision, you're talking about these handmade lenses that use only the choicest glass, and they're built to withstand regular use for decades. Also, they're very, very accurate. The focus marks on these lenses are calibrated, and the bigger the shoot, the more accuracy counts. This is really important when filming complicated shots with lots of movement, where you'll need more than an operator or assistant who's good at pulling focus by eye. This is the culmination of countless readings and precise marks on the follow focus, all of which need to be choreographed so the camera, the subject, and the focus pull land perfectly at the right moment. You can measure the distance to your subject, adjust your lens to that reading, and know it'll be tack sharp. And finally, there's the look. Let's see these 3 lenses side by side. They use the very best glass and the very best coatings. They're sharp across the entire frame and reduce or remove chromatic aberration, vignetting, and barrel distortion. We see this difference between the photo lens and the cinema lenses in our test, but notice there's no real difference between our higher-end rehoused lens and the true cinema lens. There isn't a real difference in focus breathing between these 2 lenses either. Notice again, our Zeiss rehoused lens has a focus throw nearly equal to its cinema brother. Rehoused cinema lenses come in a range from lower-priced photo lenses with gears thrown on them up to lenses that have been entirely rebuilt for use in video. Under most circumstances, you won't see much of a difference between higher-end rehoused lenses and their cinema counterparts. Let's take a look at zooms for a minute. Here's a Canon 16-35 2.8 photo zoom versus a Canon 2.8 cinema zoom. Cinema zooms tend to do away with a lot of the barrel distortion we talked about in the last episode, but there's an even more important difference. When you zoom in or out on a photo lens, your focus will drift. Cinema zooms, on the other hand, are parfocal, meaning their zoom mechanism is internal, and therefore your plane of focus won't change as you zoom. That's hugely important anytime you want to use zoom as a look in your film. If you're shooting a Hollywood film, precision is everything and you'll need a true cinema lens. But if you're shooting content on a smaller scale, it might not be. Knowing these differences will allow you to make an informed decision about what lens is right for your particular shoot. Thanks for watching.